What's up, y'all, and welcome back to Debate the Hype. I am your host, Jasmine, and we are on the set of Ladies of Hype, our place for women, creatives, different backgrounds, different crafts. And today we have the talented, world-renowned costume designer and wardrobe stylist, Marci Rodgers. Hi, Marci, how are you?
I'm good, how are you?
Good, thank you so much for coming on Ladies of Hype and gracing our set. I think you're one of the most talented costume designers and wardrobe stylists in the game right now. Everything you've done is just absolutely amazing. I'm a huge fan, so thank you for coming on.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. So I kind of just want to start from the beginning. Like, I know something that you post on a lot of your social posts is you say hashtag a kid from Chicago.
Oh, yeah.
I think that's so dope. So tell us a little bit about your roots. Where are you from?
Well, I'm originally from a northern suburb of Chicago. I grew up in Evanston, Illinois. My father had a barbecue restaurant on the west side of Chicago, and I attended Chicago State prior to matriculating and graduating from Howard University. So for, I guess for me, I just embody all of Chicago. And I will always say I'm just a kid from Chicago no matter where I live.
That's dope.
Yeah.
I know Chicago has so much history when it comes to not only, the sneaker game, but also to just what the people of Chicago are about.
Mm-hmm.
And so I know that you started school in Chicago, but then you transferred into going to one of the best HBCUs, if not the best HBCU, Howard. So how was that? How was it going from Chicago to DC?
Well, I think Howard University is the best HBCU. Of course, other people will beg to differ. But I would say transitioning from Chicago to Howard, it was a culture shock.
Yeah.
To be honest with you. So when I got to Howard, it was pretty much a melting pot for me. I saw people from obviously New York, from Philly, from Jersey, Trinidad.
Yeah.
There were people from California, Texas, and it was literally all of our, one thing I picked up on, DC, obviously, and Maryland. And particularly those who had accents, they rep their town or where they were from the hardest. Yeah. Obviously, New Yorkers rep the hardest. That was huge, so everybody's culture literally came to Howard and just made it what it was for me, which is an experience I'll never forget.
Do you go back and visit Howard a lot? I know that a lot of celebrities and influencers who went to Howard, they rep Howard since they've been there to now. Like, Your alumni, you're still there in spirit. So do you ever go back, rep a little bit?
I used to go back way too much. When I worked at Howard, when I worked at the law school, my boss at the time would tell me, Marci, stay away from main campus. Because for me, that was my source of inspiration. Mm-hmm. And I tell people, I'm from Chicago, but I became a woman in DC.
Yeah.
So now I have the opportunity to go back to Howard as a alumni and definitely during homecoming, see my former classmates as well as sorority sisters. Mm-hmm. And that to me is special. It kind of like gives me a boost. Yeah. And sometimes if I could just kind of force a trip, I'm forcing a trip just to go to Howard. And I just literally walk around the campus and I feel the same feelings that I felt when I first stepped foot on campus in 2002. And even DC for that matter, and just seeing how it's changed.
At Howard, is that kind of where you knew like, okay, I want to go into costume design and wardrobe styling, or was it before Howard?
It was way before. I always had a passion for fashion. That's so cliche, but I should say clothing and fabric, really. Yeah. When I was in high school, I used to dress I had all the new sneakers. Every time a Jordan came out, every time like the Pippins, the Rodmans, Karl Malones, Penny Hardaways, I had all of it. Yeah. And thankfully, I guess my peers in high school, they voted me best dressed. So I was best dressed in high school.
Still best dressed now?
Thank you. And and I was actually on the homecoming court to be homecoming queen. So that was an interesting experience. And I think that's when I started to really, really understand my style and how I think I invigorated people with how I dress. And I mentioned to you before, like at that time, it was a crazy, sexy, cool era, which was TLC. Obviously, you had, MC Lyte was a little bit earlier, but just like regalness and just kind of like understanding your queendom, I guess. And so when I wanted to go away for college, my father told me that I had to go for business and not fashion, and that kind of hurt me. But thankfully he knew something that I didn't know, and I say it all the time, where you have to be taught business.
Exactly.
But the gift that God gives you is already inside of you.
It's natural.
So I went to Howard, I graduated from Howard with my bachelor's in business, and I was dibbling and dabbling in fashion and styling, if you will, kind of vicariously living through my classmates because I didn't want to let my parents down. And then after I graduated, I started a blog called Heels and High Tops.
Oh, dope. Okay. Is it still live?
No, and it's funny because somebody recently reminded me, like, you remember that blog you started, Heels and High Tops? And it was like a thing.
If we search the archives, could we find it?
Yeah.
Okay.
It was on Blogger. And I was just like head over heels with just like style. And I started to second guess myself, honestly. So I stepped away from it. And I would do like wardrobe styling on the weekends, which to any wardrobe stylists out there, no offense, but that's not, because I really wasn't ready to step all the way out on faith. And that's when I decided while working at Howard to study abroad at Central St. Martin's.
Okay.
Where I obtained a certificate in fashion design and marketing.
Gotcha. So when you went abroad, was that where you kind of started to tap into that understanding the technical side of costume design? What was that like?
Well, that was more so fashion.
Okay.
Because I hadn't even reached costume design at that point. I mean, I hadn't, let me say this, in a span of 12 months, let's say I went to Central St. Martin's in March. By June, I was laid off from Howard. By September, I was full-time in the costume design.
Gotcha.
So everything really it torpedoed so fast for me. But when I was in London, what I did gain from that experience was definitely walking in faith, because I was there by myself alone. I had already had a career, but I knew this was something that was always in my heart. And so I went to London. I would remember walking around the streets. Like, I would come here and, take off of work. I guess now I can say this because I'm self-employed. But I would literally call off of work sick to come to, when I was working at Howard, to walk down the streets of Soho just so I could feel whatever it was that I wanted. Yeah. And that was fashion. Right?
Yeah, Soho is the place where
for sure
fashion, yeah.
Or even Canal Street at the time.
No, yeah, that's true.
Fashion for me just kind of happened. But I also would say it. So what I did was I like to tell people I manifested my mentor, Reggie Ray, who's no longer with us. But I said I wanted a mentor in costume design because I didn't really know what it meant to be a costume designer. A lot of people, when I first got into the industry, they thought I designed Halloween costumes. But that's what they know. Yeah, gotcha. They don't understand what it means to create clothing and to create a character or even a brand for that matter. So when Reggie came into my life, he took me under his wing, and I didn't learn costume design. He didn't teach me costume design. He taught me, he pulled whatever was in me out, like the hustle. Gotcha. And like believing in myself. And then that's when I went into, I started matriculating and got my second master's at University of Maryland. Okay. In the theater department.
Nice. Well, RIP to Reggie, but grace him because he definitely pulled something amazing out of you, and you are very talented. So let's start talking about a little bit of the work you've done. So you went from the extreme of the award-winning Black Klansman to doing the world of Wu-Tang Clan and She's Gotta Have It. What was it like for you to have to take those characters off of the page and bring them to life? Because I think that's something a lot of people don't understand, that a wardrobe stylist and costume designer, they bring those characters to life. And so what was that process like for you?
For me, I guess we could start with Mars Blackman, which is iconic. And when Spike called me and offered me the position to design She's Gotta Have It, the first thing I did was I went and watched She's Gotta Have It, the original. Yeah. Just for many reasons.
Classic, if you haven't seen it, go watch it.
For sure. And just kind of understanding the Mars Blackman character, the Jamie character, Nola. Yeah. And so I immediately just started digging and just trying to pull up research because, again, like I said, I'm from Chicago. So this was based in Brooklyn. Yeah. So I had to keep that in mind.
Exactly.
And keep my own, what I, how do I want to say this? My own biases is how I grew up and how we dress in Chicago
is different. Yeah.
Here at all. So definitely started pulling images. We fast forward to production. I'll never forget. I had like a wall of research. So if you ever come to a set, particularly a costume designer set, they will have like a wall of research and also a book of research. So I remember showing Spike some of my research for Mars' shoes, and I think at the time it was some LeBrons that just came out, and he was like, absolutely not. Mars is not wearing LeBrons. And I was like, oh, okay. Jordans? And he was like, absolutely. Mars wears nothing but Jordans.
Nothing but Jordans.
So, of course, I jump over the moon because I'm from Chicago. I'm like, thank you, baby Jesus. So I was like, can I go get the Jordans now? So I, first things first, I went to, obviously I reached out to Jordan and Nike. Thank you so much for sending me shoes for Mars Black Men, which was played by Anthony Ramos.
What was your favorite shoes you had to put on Mars?
The Tokyos, hands down.
Nice.
We actually got some Jordan 1s painted, and it says, please, baby, please, in orange and blue. You see them season 1.
Okay, yeah.
Of See You Gotta Have It. Those to me were kind of cool because that was like Mars's version of if he had to make a Jordan. Mm-hmm. And as you know, I don't know if you know, but Please Baby Please was like Mars, Black Men, Spike, Anthony Ramos. That was their thing, like begging Nola for love. Fast forwarding to Black Klansman, thankfully I had Ron Starworth there, and I asked him questions about how he dressed because he's alive, you know, and so I definitely wanted to make sure that I was paying the appropriate homage to him and what he wore in the 70s. And particularly, I tell people, I'm not a 70s baby, so I can only go off of photos.
Yeah.
My process with that was, when we started production, I requested to go back to Howard University, which is, obviously, I've said this over and over, my alma mater, but I went to Moreland Spring Arm. And there's a picture actually on my Instagram. I'm like at a table about this big, and I have books. And they're all old school Essence books.
Oh, nice.
Essence magazines, I should say. They're hardcover though. And I'm literally like going through these advertisements to pick and choose, I would say research, because what I found was during that time, unless you go into someone's photo album, there weren't a lot of photos of African-American culture, except like the Panthers or, you know, how the media portrayed us.
Yeah.
And that was pretty cool. And I was able to find original pictures of Kwame Ture, which was, you know, he was formerly Stokely Carmichael. So that process was interesting, and just really like digging and like falling in love with the 70s and understanding how to manipulate some costumes so that they look 70s. Funny enough, I got a lot of my costumes from Zara because at the time they had the silhouette of the 70s. So understanding silhouettes. But I've mentioned to you before, the Wu-Tang opportunity was, that was, you know, when I got the call for that, it was like Say No More.
Yeah. I feel like from our conversations, I think Wu-Tang was probably one of your top, when it came to wardrobe researching, that was probably really fun for you because you kind of remembered what that era was.
Sure.
So was that more interesting for you, or was probably Black Klansman because you were having to learn more in this research versus where you could, in Wu-Tang, you could go off of more of your knowledge from you growing up?
I think they both, you know, people ask me like, which one is my favorite? And I would say being able to get the feedback that I get from the audience and people, obviously if I'm telling their stories like Ron Starworth or RZA or Method Man, that's what makes it my favorite.
Yeah.
Because I don't think you can compare the two. What I will say about Wu-Tang was, again, me being from the Midwest, I remember Wu-Tang, but I didn't listen to Wu-Tang, if that makes sense, because they were a bit more like harsh rap, and I was into like Bone Thugs and Harmony. I'm telling you my age now. Or like Crucial Conflict, or like Twista, you know? So that was like my thing. So it was all happening at the same time, but I do remember, you know, when I had the opportunity to design Wu-Tang, Clan and American Saga, one of the jackets that one of the characters wears is an Avirex. And I'm like, I remember that as a teenager, because I had an Avrex, had no business with an Avrex, but I did. Having RZA there to kind of guide my research, Method Man to guide how he wanted his character to be dressed, which was Shotgun, played by Dave East. That in itself was cool because Method Man only wore walker wear. If you know.
Right.
So, and you know, shout out to April Walker because she's become a very close friend of mine. Actually, I'm wearing her mask today. And just to hear the stories that she tells me now kind of connects the dots back to when I was doing my actual research.
Gotcha.
You know, and for her to be like, Marci, you nailed it. I'm like, thank you, because she lived it. And, you know, cross colors. Shout out to TJ Walker, like shout out to Carl Kanai. Like these people were sending me stuff from their archives.
Oh, wow.
Like
That's
this
awesome.
stuff wasn't retro or remade. It was literally like, here you go. Shout out to Dapper Dan. Dapper Dan made a lot of things for me. For She's Gotta Have It, as well as Wu-Tang Clan American Saga. Shout out to Misa Hilton. She made something for me from MCM. So for me, Wu-Tang allowed me to really pay homage to the designers and the stylists of the 90s. And I was very particular about that.
Yeah.
Shout out to the Low Lives, because they sent me, I mean, literally the Low Lives came into my office with 3 racks of original polo.
Wow.
None of that stuff, maybe 10% of it was retro. But when I tell you, like, I saw the Snow Beach jacket, the original Snow Beach jacket from the 90s.
No way.
I think I like had the whole production like in the like they were in the palm of my hands, like, Marci, how did you find it? And I'm like, it was all like, you know, it was the universe.
Yeah.
So Wu-Tang was just, that to me was like, if I lived in New York in the 90s, this is how I would interpret it. Because now I'm seeing photos of it.
Yeah, gotcha. I think that's so dope. From in the film industry, you were able to have all these people want to collaborate with you because you were doing such dope stories. And I think stories is a huge part of everything. And I think that's one thing behind a lot of sneakers is there's always a story. And then that creates a space for there to be collaboration. So could you see yourself ever doing a collaboration with a sneaker brand?
I've always said that I wanted to do a collaboration with Nike just because that's what I grew up on. I mean, and we talked about like The Last Dance, and Jordan for me was just, it was a gift and a curse. Because when I was growing up at the time in Chicago, you know, unfortunately you would get robbed for your shoes. Like it was nothing. And now it's a sense of pride. And so for me, Nike has always been, you know, like the holy grail of brands.
Yeah.
I have considered definitely doing a collaboration. I would like to do a collaboration with New Balance because, you know, I just like the silhouette of their shoes. But I would say Nike.
Okay, dope. I see that you brought one of your custom pair that you've done. That's fire. That's a Jordan 1 High?
Yes.
Yeah. Nice.
So I got frustrated one day and I was like, why are these shoes so white? And so I literally just started, I actually did this with a permanent marker. And if you see on the top, it says just a kid from Chicago. And that's actually the Chicago skyline that I've drawn on the shoe. And almost, I would say like a summer day, I guess, if I had to just throw it out there. And, you know, I think as a woman, it's important to just remind myself, you know, what it is to be a queen, I should say. That's, you know, another conversation for itself. But just like always having these words and reminders around me. So yeah, that's something that I did last summer.
I see you brought a couple more. So you have the Yeezys right here, repping Chi-Town. And then you said these are the first pair you got when you moved to New York?
Yes, so these shoes, so when I went to Flight Club and I had like 6 or 7 shoes that I had pulled aside, or Jordans I had pulled aside for Mars, it was my first check as a costume designer, and I had probably had no business spending that amount of money on these shoes because they were resale. But I got these from Flight Club, and I remember walking on set and everybody was like, oh my God, where did you get those acronyms? And obviously I got them from Flight Club. And it was funny because I always know sometimes if Spike likes my shoes or not, because he'll look at my shoes, and then he'll just, you know, so I felt like I had gotten approval. And this was Marci's version of coming into the world of she's got to have it. So
Yeah.
this was like my tipping point, I would say. So if I had to say that I was creating Marci by way of Mars and Nola, to me, that's Mars and Nola.
It is. Those are dope. Those are really fire. The
Yeah.
fact that you've like still kept them in great condition.
Oh, I'm
is
very
impressive.
particular about my shoes.
Impressive.
Like, I think I've worn those like 5 times.
No, yeah. It's hard for me in New York. Like, we have to walk everywhere. It's hard for me to keep my shoes clean. So I try not to wear my super nice ones. Like,
I know.
Gotta stay away.
It's fresh out the box. That's what they say.
So 2020, I think, has been a year of pause for a lot of people. And I know earlier you were saying how since you were, growing up as a kid in Chicago, you manifested where you wanted to be today. Has 2020 been a continuation of that, where you've had to pause and reflect and manifest? What have you been manifesting on lately?
Yes. So when the world shut down, I actually decided not to shelter in place in New York. I decided to shelter in place at my parents'.
Okay.
And a part of that was just to make sure that they were good, because my parents are elderly. But as I was home, it kind of dawned on me that I needed to be there because I was in my childhood bedroom, which is where a lot of my thoughts started, when I was in high school. And thankfully, during quarantine, it's funny because I know we're going to look back on this 20 years from now and be like, quarantine was a word that we never thought we'd use.
Exactly.
I've met a few people who actually became my accountability partners. And I'm thankful for them because I always had an idea in my mind, but now I didn't have an excuse of being on set, right? I'm like, what are you doing? You have absolutely nothing to do today.
Yeah.
But to be productive. Of course, like many, I signed up for like 1,000 classes.
Oh yeah. I did that too.
Yeah, it was. Some of them I took. Some of them I was like, this can wait. One thing that I did do, which I always said I wanted to do, was I took a class on director of photography and a director's class, also in producing, because I want to actually get into the producing side of film and TV. It kind of makes sense now. Well, it made sense then, but it just for what I want to do, it just it just helped me understand and be a better artist from this standpoint. And then when I get into that, I'll know a little bit more. But so I did that, and I wrote a book. I wrote a children's book.
Oh wow, when does it come out?
It's coming out, I'm releasing it August 27th, which is my birthday. So
we'll be on the lookout.
Yes.
Exclusive, Ladies of Hype.
And I had my sister, actually, who's handicapped. I had her, one day I just told her, like, I need you to draw something. So she drew this t-shirt.
Wow. That's
so
amazing.
she did that. And what else did I do? I think I brought a bit of breath air to my family. Because I was in Chicago for 6 months. Yeah. Well, we've been shut down for 6 months, so yeah. And so everything that I could say I wanted to do now within this 6 months has come to pass. So now it's just the fruits of my labor and just seeing it grow. So, when I see people say 2020 is canceled, for me, it was never canceled because I have my huge faith in God. So I understand my inroad to it is a little different. There were times where it was kind of heavy. Obviously the George Floyd thing, I think for anyone, that was pretty heavy. And I had to like recenter myself and figure out inspiration. But it just dawned on me that you never really lose inspiration. You just have to reignite it.
Exactly.
So just manifesting and saying things over and over kind of happened for me. It always happens.
That's beautiful. Well said. That's awesome. I'm happy that you've been using 2020 as that space, and I think it's cool that you were able to spend it with your family. I think a lot of people use this year to spend time with their family, which is very important. And the things that have been going on in the world recently with George Floyd and Breonna Taylor, it's just having people who are close to you around you is very important at that time. So I think that's beautiful that you did that. Now this is Debate the Hype, so I think you can debate a little bit with me real quick.
Sure.
Okay. So on our Debate the Hype team, we always have this conversation. So I'm gonna see what you have to say. Is there a difference between a sneakerhead and a sneaker consumer? What do you think the difference is, and which one are you?
I mean, I think from my business brain and my business background, a sneaker consumer, to me, has the idea in mind to resell the shoe and or gain some type of profit, be it social economically, meaning they're cool, or they're gonna resell it as a resale value. I think a sneakerhead, which I've mentioned to you before, has a true emotional attachment and a story behind every shoe, or will eventually have a story behind every shoe that they have, so that it's not so much like, let's just say when you go into Target, you know, you're going in there for a pack of socks, but then when you go through the aisle, the $5 aisle, like, that's an impulse buy. Most sneakerheads don't. There is no impulse buying. Like, they know, I want to go get this shoe, or this reminds me of this. This, you know, it gives a certain feeling. I think that it's funny because I was just reading something about, like, it was like a meme on Instagram about the Jordan 1s. I think it was Off-Whites, if I'm not mistaken. And they had a picture of an Off-White, and then they had a picture of, like, two gentlemen who were in a room with, like, maybe 500 Off-White shoes. You could clearly tell. And it said, so the meme said, who's the villain? Is it the Off-White, or is it the people, you know, the two gentlemen who had the 500 pairs of Off-White shoes? Are they really sneakerheads? Because resale value for Off-Whites right now
are
insane.
Crazy.
So like, imagine 500 pairs of shoes at $1,000 resale.
Yeah.
No, and I think it's debatable. I would like to understand their point of view and their entryway into why, you know, it's like anything, it's supply and demand.
Yeah.
Sneakerheads aren't going for something because of supply and demand. They just like a shoe and they can make it rock.
Yeah. That's interesting you say that, because we actually have two of our other hosts, Adrian and Upscale. They're two resellers, but I feel like they're also sneakerheads. I feel like they're both people in that picture you just described, with the one who has they're in the room with the Off-White because they love this Jordan style, or they love Off-White, the brand. But then they also are in the room where they have the 50 pair of Off-Whites.
So if that's the case, then why sell it at an uptick value?
Because I think reselling is just a game. Like, it's a career field at this point, honestly. And I think that's something they've tapped into from their love of sneakers. And I think they started off as sneakerheads, and then when they saw, you know, the world up and up to where this resale game could be tapped into, I think they, you know, went head in and just went for it.
But then I debate the conversation about, like, I remember when I went to SneakerCon, actually season 1 of She's Gotta Have It. And that, to me, was an interesting environment, because obviously you have resellers, but you also have traders.
Gotcha. Okay.
So you're trading shoes, you know what I mean? Like, they literally would be like, oh, you got the Yeezys, blah, 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 I got these. Oh, I wanted those. Let's swap boxes, because, again, there's an emotional value. Yeah. So there's no like profit there. Like, the profit is you're walking away feeling emotionally fulfilled, because now you have a shoe that you didn't, you obviously couldn't get access to, or you didn't have.
Okay.
So then that, to me, is why I guess sometimes I'm like, you know, and then also the idea of it being a resale shoe, or you know, reselling shoes, that's not going back to the company.
Yeah, that's true.
Which is fine, or it's not going back to the designer, which is fine, but you know, bartering and trading was once a thing, and I think I mentioned this to you before, but the internet has allowed for the younger generation to manipulate and move certain things that they deem as can create some type of value for them. You know, when I was growing up, sneakers was just, you were going to Foot Locker, where our Tony Sports in Chicago. You know, sometimes when I would come up here, I'd go to Harlem, or actually I would get shoes right here on Canal Street. And they were, you know, I can walk away with some Huaraches for $90.
Yeah.
But I also know what the value of the shoe is. A lot of people who are, I would say, I think some consumers may not understand that shoe only costs $110.
Yeah. Do you ever think that, I think Upscale mentioned this to me at one point. He said how the bigger brands like Nikes and Adidas, they're honestly reselling their product because the amount it costs for them to make this shoe is nowhere near the amount that it is to sell it. And then I would see it as a secondhand resale, to be honest, because these bigger companies are reselling it, and then our resellers are reselling that. So I think it's interesting you have that perspective. And I
guess I don't know. I think for me, just growing up in the 90s, like it's a bigger conversation, but I think for me, growing up in the 90s, culture is really what you're talking about, because you're buying into the culture and whatever that is, you know what I mean? And particularly where you grew up, and what you were exposed to. Because again, we didn't have the internet like that when I was growing up. So like now, it's not surprising to me that the bigger brands are reselling shoes, because they also know that it goes back to supply and demand. Like, you know, when I would reach out to Jordan sometime for Mars, it wasn't that they couldn't and didn't want to send me the shoes. It's just that they were very clear that they only kept so many shoes in the vault. Yeah. And that taught me something, you know, like when you have a certain amount of shoes in the vault, that makes them so much more expensive, and also somebody's going to be willing to pay that amount of money for this pair of shoes. There was Derek Jeter's at Stadium Goods, never forget it. Jordan Lows. You had the Jordan Lows and the Jordan Highs, Derek Jeter's. And I think they were selling them, if I'm not mistaken, they were selling the Lows for $30,000. Wow. Imagine paying $30,000 for a pair of Derek Jeter Jordans. Somebody would have bought them. Supreme. Yeah. I mean, you know, I was recently watching this documentary on Supreme. This is segueing a bit, but Supreme, the idea of Supreme was it was just a place where skateboard kids can come. Yeah. But now, if you walk around the corner pre-COVID, maybe post-COVID, it's a line around the corner for like a $60 shirt. Yeah, that has one thing on it. But again, that they have an emotional connection to it now. That's because true. It makes them feel some type of way. So I'm curious to know what makes the consumer, like what emotional connection does the consumer have? And if they say they're going to make money off of it, then I don't know if that makes them a sneakerhead. Okay, gotcha. And sneakerheads, let me be very clear. I don't think you have to be attached to a certain brand. Yeah. You know, like I can find some Reeboks, and I have before found some Reeboks at Burlington, and I'll literally be walking down the street and somebody be like, where'd you get those from? You know, and I can like laugh, like, how these cost $20. But it's also about, you know, how you carry it, how you put it together. Yeah, exactly. Well, thank you for debating with me about that. I think we should have you back to have this conversation on tell and resell with Adrian Upskill. Oh, please. Because they would love to go back and forth with you. They would love it. I'm ready. Thank you so much, Marci, for coming on here. I just love hearing about your story. I think something that you really embody is the story behind everything you do. So there's a story behind your love for sneakers. There's a story behind the fabrics you use for the costumes, the research you do. And so I think that's awesome. And I wish nothing but more blessings your way. 2020, 2021. Watch out for Marci Rodgers. She's coming for y'all. But yeah, thank you so much for being on Debate the Hype. And we will definitely have you back for so much more. Thank you. Thank you for having me. It was a pleasure. Thank you for tuning in to Ladies of Hype. This segment is brought to you by Shush Streetwear. Make sure you like, follow, and subscribe at Debate the Hype.